Materials Subcommittee information from the PWR Owners Group. And I'm Scott Greenlee, so next slide. And this is just what we're going to talk about here, so go to the next slide. This just gives you sort of the overall organization structure of the Materials Subcommittee. Chris Kohler is the chair, and as I stated earlier, Chris Kohler dotted lines really into the MRP, and there's a lot of good coordination that goes on between the MRP and the Materials Subcommittee. As Tim said, the BWR VIP's a little different. Everything's kind of contained within the BWR Owners Group. The PWR is just elected to go a little different direction, but it works just fine. Next.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. Could you tell me, please, what slide we're on?
We are on slide 57.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, the next couple of slides I'm going to cover very quickly because it's just some general technical information that I think most of you are aware of. The first one up there is the Materials Orientation Toughness Assessment. That was something that the Owners Group did for us to address the issues associated with Branch Technical Position 5-3 that we've talked about previously, so this was just a feeder into that information that you're going to get from us for information. The next one has to do with reactor vessel internals acceptance criteria. So this is the follow-on document. MRP 227 tells you how to do the inspections. This tells you what to do with the results. And we've been working with NRC on this. Our understanding is the final SE should be out in the November timeframe, and then subsequently we will incorporate the final document for the industry in early 2016. Next slide. Lower support column functionality. There have been a lot of discussions with the staff on this. I think the bottom line is we still have some more work on the industry side to address some of the additional NRC questions. And Robin, we didn't put a date on this. Did we get a date as to when we think we're going to bring this to closure? Okay, so more work to do here. The industry position is we don't see any safety significance associated with this particular issue based on the work we've done, but we obviously need to get aligned with the staff on it. The lower W cap on guide card wear, that is issued, and we have incorporated the requirements out of that W cap directly into MRP 227 Revision 1, so the industry has that information at this time. Next. And these two areas on slide 59 here just kind of summarize some of the things that the Materials Subcommittee has been doing with respect to reactor vessel integrity and reactor internals. Under reactor vessel integrity, probably the big one is that very bottom bullet, which says working to demonstrate generically that nozzles never are bounding for PT limits. So that's where we're working to bring that issue to closure in the industry, in the Materials Subcommittee. And we didn't put a date on that one either, Robin. Do we have a date yet for when we're going to finish that research? No. All right, well, we will certainly let the NRC know as we get closer, because I know that's been an issue with the staff as to whether the nozzles can become bounding. From the industry perspective, everything we've seen so far says no, but we'll finalize up that research and then get that in front of NRC. And then for reactor internals, MRP 227 and CAS, we've already really talked about, so I don't see anything new there. It's just support from the Materials Subcommittee for those particular items. Next. And the last one is just our continuing effort to put guidance out to the industry for stainless steel corrosion cracking in the PWRs. And we've had several issues in the industry where we've had some cracking, and we're developing some guidelines for the industry on generic inspections. Next. And I'm not going to cover all of these, but if you have any questions on slide 61 and next slide. 62, next slide. So slide 61, 62, if you have any particular questions on those are just the list of the documents that the Materials Subcommittee is working on, and we'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any on those. But other than that, that's really it for the Materials Subcommittee.
Scott, thanks. Appreciate that overview. I guess in a moving forward, if I could, a lot of the issues that you're dealing with in the documents are starting to get into more the extended life. The time frame when these issues can occur definitely beyond 40, some of them maybe even beyond 60. So from a process standpoint, that's something I turn towards Chris as the best vehicle to do that. As we continue to update the GAL documents and look at inspection frequencies there, that would be the best vehicle to incorporate those and make those changes.
Yeah, and that's the way we see it, and we're obviously working very close with Chris on the GAL update, and are anxiously awaiting that document. And we've already had some public meetings and discussions on it, but yeah, that's how it'll play out. Okay, turn it over to David.
Thanks. I'm David Zufin. I'm the chairman of the PMMP, and as we saw earlier, the PMMP is broken up into two areas, and I'll start with Steam Generator Management Program overview. This slide just shows how we are, the organization is set up, and it represents not only industry personnel but EPRI, and you can also see that INPO and NEI are part of it. This slide just shows some of the guideline statuses that we are working on in SPMP and where we currently are. This is also shown on slide 68 as well. Slide 69, I think the Steam Generator Task Force is a really good opportunity for us where we get together with the NRC, we discuss issues, we look at ongoing research, but it really gives us an opportunity to incorporate NRC feedback. So we think this is a good task force for us. Slide 70, when you look at some of our current issues, we have talked about divider plate. We also talked about tube-to-tube sheet weld crack propagation. That did go through a code interpretation, and we did identify that plants are going to have to do some analysis, and we came up with interim guidance for those plants.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, too, that as part of that, the owners groups put out operability evaluation information that each of the sites could use to show that although we have to go do more work and analysis, there's no safety concern at all with this issue.
And then,
if I could, I'm sorry, if I could ask for clarification, and that you're talking about the weld crack propagation at this point, right?
I'm sorry, I may have gotten into I was talking about the tube-to-tube sheet welds, actually, where different vendors took different paths. I might have gotten off on a different topic there.
Well, actually, I'm glad you did, because I was going to ask about that topic, so picked the right time to engage. So yeah, with respect to that topic, operability determinations were provided, but I think there's also some code work that's going on right now with respect to sealed welds versus structural welds, and I was curious where the Steam Generator Task Force was with those actions.
Well, Robin, you have to. I don't know if the code committee is doing anything, but my understanding is the code committee agreed with NRC that you were outside the code if you didn't have the tube-to-tube sheet weld done correctly, and therefore the utilities that are outside of that have analysis to do and to reconcile that issue. But
yeah, the Section 3 interpretation was that whatever your structural joint was had to be designed. And it didn't specifically address that it had to be welded or not. It just said it had to be designed. So based on that interpretation, the Steam Generator Management Program is now working on that, what it means to the stations. As Scott said, the operability statements were given to everybody, and they've done that assessment. And that's supposed to be a topic in the next Steam Generator Task Force meeting to discuss it. And I think that's in a couple of weeks.
Okay, good. That's what I guess where I was going with that is make sure. So there's certain utilities right now that have gotten their operability determinations and are still working with their vendors on the analysis based on this code interpretation. But the expectation is that as plants move forward, they will be meeting the current code requirements, and that the industry is not looking to make any changes to what's currently there.
And PM&P authorized, I guess, David, 6 weeks ago, funding to help with those operability determinations for each of the vendors as it would affect the owners. So that work was started then using contingency money to get the work kick-started. So should get a report at the next Steam Generator Task Force meeting.
Great, thanks, appreciate it.
Sorry about that, David.
Oh, that's all right. These are the other items. I'm going to talk a little bit more about mechanical wear of tubes and the in-plane fluid elastic instability. We'll talk a little more about that. And then the last item is the improved inspection capabilities. For the in-plane fluid elastic instability test, John, I think you got a letter from Eric Larson laying this out, but this is our current schedule. We plan to start performing air tests this fall. It goes into next year, and then we'll review the air tests and then look at Freon tests. And right now, this is our current plan, and we have checkpoints throughout this to see, if the air tests don't produce valuable information, or we think that the Freon is not, then we're going to have to step back and regroup based on what the testing's telling us. Based on what the testing's telling us. Okay, next I'm going to go in.
Before you go there, Dave, thanks, appreciate it. We appreciate the industry's efforts in this area, and we also appreciate the fact that not only the timing you have here, but keeping us in the loop so that we can look at observing some of the testing and in real time understand what's going on. This continues to get attention of our senior management because it's part of the SOLMS lessons learned actions that we're following up on.
I understand, John. I'm going to now go into the section for the MRP overview. I'll give a little bit, we can just move on. If I look at history, I'm on slide 74. Really started in the late 1990s. We developed the MRP, and the legacy deliverables were really the Alloy 600 management plan. And obviously, we've had a lot of discussion about MRP 227 as well. You can see the membership. We have a very wide membership that includes U.S. and foreign utilities. The MRP organization is shown here. Bernie Riddell, he's with X1. He is our IC chair. And you can see how we're broken out into the different areas. Okay, these are some the MRP guidelines that have active requirements. And I'll just let you know that when you look at needed and mandatory, they're very similar. The difference is that if you cannot meet a mandatory requirement, then in addition to everything you need to do for needed, which is to put a technical justification together, you have to have when the duration will be met, you have to have a executive approval. It's identified to the industry, and we also notify the NRC. And the issue program does an independent review. And for a mandatory, in addition to that, you have to have a independent review done by someone other than the utility. So these are actually the active requirements, and we keep very close tabs on where we are with any deviations in these areas.
Yeah, and just so you understand the magnitude, I mean, the industry takes those very, very seriously if you ever don't meet one of those requirements. And, for example, at Exelon, to not meet one of those requirements requires my signature. The plants can't actually do that themselves. That has to come up to me.
Thanks, appreciate that. And if we can go back a slide, if you don't mind. So yeah, we understand the levels and the categories, and I guess just to make sure we're all on the same page as we go forward. Many of these documents also become a regulatory requirement when they're incorporated either as part of a renewed license or a licensing action that takes place. And when we get to that level, therefore, things such as the 0308, whether it's mandatory or needed or good practice, kind of are trumped, if you will, by becoming a regulatory requirement at that point. And we had the conversation about some of the documents, even though they're mandatory, may have a mix. And I'll use the 227. Dave Zufin and I had a discussion about this. Was for 227, some of these are regulatory requirements for plants because they've been incorporated into their license and are now a regulatory requirement, which include many licensee-specific action items that are not in the base document of 227. But with respect to, and I pulled that one off because it is a mandatory document, and it does have licensee-specific action items from a regulatory standpoint, but it's our understanding for plants that don't have that as a regulatory requirement. The mandatory part is the document itself and not the licensee-specific action items, that they don't become mandatory. So that was something of an education to me when we went through that. So just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, that's what we discussed. Okay, some of the key products that we're working on this year, we've talked about Branch Technical Position 5-3 already. I'll talk a little bit more about MRP 227 Revision 1, and along with that goes 228. We'll also talk a little bit about the stress improvement. That's actually the PME. And then we also have a handbook for butt-weld finite element modeling. These are the topics that I'm going to have a little more discussion on. First one's thermal fatigue. As you know, we found that operating experience, we started to see a increased frequency in thermal fatigue, and we put together a emergent issue response focus group, and really went out to the industry, CNOs, and told them about what we were seeing in the OE. We analyzed the causes of each event, and then we published interim guidance to try to manage the significance. We published that back in May. And that interim guidance, you can see when it applies. It's for refueling outages after October 1st, and with additional exams being done June of next year. And that interim guidance really looks more at frequency of inspections, some scoping, and then NDE. And then in parallel, we have folks going out and looking at what we need to do to better understand the gaps in the thermal fatigue. So you can see what we're doing. We're looking not only internally to the U.S., but we're going out internationally to look. And then our plan is to, with any interim guidance, is to get the final guidance updated.
Dave, what does that second bullet mean? Interim guidance not designed to reduce event frequency.
The interim guidance is really around. We haven't figured out necessarily why we're seeing this increase. What we're trying to do is increase the number of inspections to try to catch it before it's an issue. So what we got to do is figure out the initiating reason for it, and we haven't figured that out yet, Bob.
Yeah. In other words, all we're doing is going to be finding the things before they become leaks. We're still having the problem. How do we eliminate the actual fatigue mechanism is the question.
The events that crack.
The crack.
Than,
Correct.
Okay, for the peening mitigation, I'd like to start by just saying we appreciate, this had kind of stalled, and we really appreciate the good dialogue we've had, and we think we're starting to make some good progress on this. I've got some information here that just essentially says the topical report review and SE, what we're looking at for dates. And then really, as far as approach to peening mitigation, you can see that the performance criteria is in the MRP report. And that last bullet is just shows that if we do want to do application, that we would likely go down a relief request path.
I think likely is pretty much a certainty. Those of us who are going to be peening will be obviously coming in to take credit for the work that we're doing.
And this just shows the open issues that are we're still working through, and it looks at can we do this under a 50-59? Some of the NRC concerns that have been identified, we think that we are addressing those in Rev 2 of the MRP document. The third bullet, we have the probabilistic analysis, and we're getting some feedback that don't seem to be getting much weight for that, much credit for that. And I don't know if that's something we need to discuss, at the end or here, but it's just one item that it seems like the probabilistic fracture mechanics is there's some might be some differing opinions of the value.
Yeah, since you have these as open items, maybe we can discuss them now and maybe close at least one of them, and then talk about the steps to move forward on the rest. So with respect to the first issue, I believe there was a code inquiry with ASME. I'm going to get the wording a little wrong here, but pretty much what was stated was it was okay to do peening to the material, and you did not need to get relief from the code to do that. It was in accordance with the code, therefore you don't need to get a relief from the NRC to do the peening. And we have no objection to that code inquiry. Where the concern would come is if now you want to take a relief from the inspection frequency or the inspection intervals, that would require a relief. But peening, as you said, peening without inspection credit does not require a relief request from the NRC. So
Yeah,
I think you
and
can
I think we're in agreement there.
Yeah, so that's, you have it as an open issue. I think that's a closed issue there. Let's, before we get to your third bullet, talk a little bit about from an inspection relief standpoint. Because you can peen at any time, you could always peen and decide not to request inspection relief and come back at another time later to request a relief. And that's your call when you want to do that. From the standpoint of what characteristics did you get from the peening that you did and how effective was it, which would be the basis for relief, we'll be asking those questions along the way somewhere. So it seemed to me the more effective and efficient way would be to request for that relief at the same time when you're looking at doing the peening, so that we could look at the characteristics to make sure that we believe your claims that you're making as far as effectiveness and how it impacts the mitigation that you believe you're getting, which therefore would allow us to approve a relief from inspection. It's not required to be submitted, but again, at that time frame, that's where I would say you could get some certainty. With respect to item number 3 now, on the probabilistic analysis, as you stated, we are looking at a topical report right now, MRP 335. That's where the issue is coming up. I think that's a topic that should come up right now as part of that topical report review. We just got some RAI responses back from, I believe, from a status standpoint. We're looking at those, having a public meeting on that specific topic, I think would be a good way to move forward, because that's really going to be setting precedent from the standpoint of, one, people who are using the topical report for those relief requests, but also there may be others who are requesting relief that aren't using the topical report, maybe using some other methodology, and having the NRC position on what's needed, or at least one acceptable way, and what the basis is. It'd be good to get that solidified now.
Okay.
So I think on that item, Dave, it's really, I don't think we need to track it as an action item for this meeting, but I would say really for the people working on MRP 335, if there's concerns about the NRC not giving substantial weight to the probabilistic analysis, let's do that right now as part of that meeting, and we'll make sure that we have our research folks who are looking at this supporting us in the meeting, and either MJ or myself will attend that meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good, John. And the intention for the inspection credit would be the relief requests should come in, at least the Exelon relief request will be submitted as soon as we get the final SE on the topical report. So it'll be pretty quickly after that, because we'll use the topical report, obviously, as the basis for the relief.
Okay, so you will be using the 335 as the basis for your relief?
Correct.
Okay.
And so the timing will be based on whenever we get the SE done for that topical.
If I could also add to this, comment here, is that, this is an area, and it's interesting because it falls right behind where Bob had some questions a minute ago about event frequencies. This is an area that, again, has the mitigation in it, and so kudos to the industry on looking for mitigation. We could always go through the proactive inspections, but we know you're looking at it from a cost savings as well. It's much easier or cost effective if you peen and get a mitigation, and therefore you don't have to do repairs later. But we also see it as a safety enhancement. So we have our priority on this as well. And I'm not prejudging where our outcome is going to be. Again, we're only saying that is if we believe the peening is effective, that it becomes a mitigation.
Yeah, and we totally agree with that. I mean, the peening technology has come a long way. Lots of international experience, which shows it is highly effective, and it really is a very strong safety enhancement for the heads.
And then, just so we're clear, I think the current revision that you have is Rev 1, and Rev 2 is come through the integration committee, so that should be issued here shortly.
Any substantial changes that you would want to put in now, or is that going to come in as a later document another time?
Well, I guess, John, real quick, after all the phone calls and all the discussions and the RAI responses, Rev 2 should reflect those conversations and where industry is with that. So there may still be some points of disagreement once you see it, but with all the conversations that have gone on over the last 6 months and the public meetings, that's to be built into the Rev that'll come in.
Okay, so Rev 2 is really along the line of addressing the questions and comments you've gotten from the NRC. Okay.
And I do know they've already had the discussions about having a public meeting. My sense is we may need to have that meeting sooner than what they're talking about to flesh out some of this, but we'll take that back to the MRP.
And I would agree with you, maybe, not even knowing the date, I should say this, but yeah, probably sooner, because we are trying to work towards an end of the calendar year for completion of the review.
Next item I have is on my list is the MRP 227 Rev 1. We do plan to issue that this year, and it really, what this slide really just says is all the things that we have incorporated into Rev 1 that are being put into Rev 1.
I guess one of the topics we'll need to discuss as you bring in Rev 1 is certain plants have already committed and are licensed to the initial document, not Rev 1. And if you're looking at addressing some of the licensee action items that were in that document, how would those plants be